All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:30. First item on the agenda, approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Van, second by Bruce to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right, item 3, 2023 budget work session. Section A, revenues.
2024.
4,
Should be 4. 23 budget.
well, it's 23 session for the 24 budget, I guess.
Okay. We'll call it that.
Yeah.
Russian nesting dolls.
Yeah.
I guess I'll kind of do a little introduction here. This is my first complete budget cycle with the village. In prior communities, we've never done anything this formal for myself. So this is kind of a learning experience for me, working with the full board instead of just a little committee like I've done in the past. With that being said, Kenny and I have been working on the budget process since sometime in July. We've been tweaking it with more common updates to our expenditures based on month-to-month expenditures throughout the year. So this is the most recent forecast that the numbers that we've had. So we roughly have 9 full months of data to kind of see where our budget's going to sit for next year. With that being said, we've been very cautious so far on the revenue side of it. We also did not show all possible revenue streams that we might have available to us. That's why we're showing the deficit that we're showing. There's certain ways that we can make a stopgap for a year or two to make that budget balance. So I'm not worried about the point about not being able to balance the budget, but there are other ways that we have to go about doing that. This is showing the revenues that we know of that will be coming in next year without going down those avenues. And that's why we're showing the deficit that we're showing. Because we feel that we can close that gap with the other ways that we have talked about. I guess before we start going item by item, department by department, any questions up front before we start that you might have, like big overarching questions, not like nitty-gritty details.
Are you gonna get into some of the budgeting assumptions?
Yes, we can talk about that stuff too. Another thing too, I'm not really looking for gigantic cuts tonight. I want you to start thinking about areas where we can cut it and give us some kind of guidance of where you kind of want to see that to go. At the November meeting, if we're really still not being balanced or close to being balanced, that's where I really want the input of cut this down, but give us the guidance tonight of areas where you might see some issues of, or raise your concerns about where areas might be too high or too low. I really want to get the feel of where we're at with this forecast and making sure that when we get to November, we are much closer to where we want to be. And then the chops that happen there or the increases or decreases that happen in November will be the final, and that's approved in December. Tanya, anything I missed?
No. Sorry, no, there isn't anything that you missed. And
Okay.
do you want to just kind of just go through?
I'll go through a few assumptions first when we start this budget.
Sure.
For insurance, for the numbers that we do not have for insurance, we're still waiting on health insurance premiums and that kind of information. The placeholder for those is a 10% increase. At this point, if we continue with the company we have been using, that's actually gonna be light. We're getting a quote from a different company, see if we can bring those healthcare costs down. We put in a 5% placement for wage increase. That wasn't to be saying we're getting a 5% wage or anything. We just felt that was a good place to hold it for now. Because once again, I'd rather be a little over on the expenditures than under, so we're not scrambling the last minute if you agree to a higher percentage. So 5% is a placeholder for the wages at this time too. Those are some of the assumptions that we made.
What was the first flash on medical renewal?
16.5.
Jeez.
And I talked to another guy, another clerk tonight. He had said, I asked what their percentage increase was, and he said it was 13.5. And it sounds like pretty much across the board, it's double-digit increases. But I'm waiting to meet with the gal from NOAA that we've worked with in the past on Thursday to get some more information from her. I also reached out to another company that I talked to a gal at the Treasurers Conference. They have a small municipality. She gave me a company that they use, and she hadn't gotten any of the numbers yet. So I had sent it to them saying, okay, this is where we're at. is there anything, and she's supposed to be getting stuff back to me in a week or so, hopefully by the end of October, so.
Do you remember what the loss ratio was?
They don't give us that.
Really? Okay.
But on the good news is for property insurance, we're looking at what, 5 to 8%? If I recall that one correctly, it was 5
I
to 8%.
haven't received that
on the
information,
property
that could be.
tax will be about 5 to 8%. So we're a little over on that
So
one.
that's not, yeah.
So we're a little over on the property one right now, where that's gonna be, but that number won't be final until probably early December.
So you're standing on a 10% health insurance renewal.
At this time, and then a 10% for our overall insurance for our property.
Can you ballpark for me what 10 to 16% would mean in terms of dollars?
So, when it comes to our insurance, there's 6 employees that are on, the Teamsters, in that union, and they're
Yeah.
on their insurance, and we do have, so the numbers that I have in there for those 6 people, I have those, and so those are accurate. So it's the other like 10 or so, just depending on, how many employees
They're non-union.
that are non-union, that we're not quite sure. I mean, we're at the 10% thing, so.
And those were a 5% increase for the Teamsters.
Yeah, I believe it was about that, yeah.
So the Teamsters health increase, we got that number or we did that for a while, that was 5% for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or assumptions before we get going?
The number that we used for the general levy and the debt levy, are preliminary as far as, we filled out, Carrie and I worked on the, levy limit worksheet last week, talked to Baird and double checked things to make sure that we were doing it correctly. And so these numbers are, accurate, except that, one of the things that we could do, as far as balancing the budget, do we want to get into that right now, or?
Let's hold off on that here. So right now, our levy limit for the general fund is coming in at $668,000 and some change for our revenue. It's an increase of $34,000 from last year. So it wasn't a huge,
And that's mainly from TID two, I believe,
Yeah.
mainly from TID two increasing, yeah.
of closing that.
Oh, because those properties are back on the roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, it's like a 7% increase.
Yeah, it's not a lot,
It's more than some years.
right?
Curious, actuals through 9/30/23 are actually over budget by 10,000. Why is that?
Which one?
Levy for general fund? Budget's 624,000 and the actual 634. It's like 10 grand. It's not a huge number. I'm
Yeah,
just curious why it.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what that, I can't answer exactly what
Okay.
that is, but, that's what's collected so far, so. I don't know.
We're not planning on collecting any more
No,
revenue dollars, so this is
This is it.
this is
yeah,
it.
Yeah,
So it'll still be.
yeah.
10
And
over for the
and
year.
debt
Interesting.
service, it says 0 in there right now. That's done by a journal entry at the end of the year.
Right.
So, and there's quite a few of those items in here. When you look, if it says 0, most likely it's, has to do with a journal entry or,
So I'm guessing we just underestimated the amount of levy dollars that we were going to be receiving this year.
Could have been. Because I know they didn't give us any extra.
But we did get additional revenue sharing dollars, or are those for 24?
those are for 24.
Those are for
So this
24,
does
and
not
they'll show up
balance
in a
the
different
24
place.
budget, it will balance the 25 budget, or help with the 25 budget.
No,
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 we're
it'll
off to
be-
24.
it'll be in 2024 for
Yeah.
the 2024 budget.
That's the state aid portion, yeah.
And
Sure.
those items we've received information on, we've gotten things from the state, so those are good numbers.
So if we keep going down these revenues, we're also making sure that we've used prior years, so we're not overstating our revenues too. So you can see we've had to use some prior years to make sure to see where that number is actually going to be in case there was some wild outliers for the revenues. Because some years you might have something that comes in really low or really high, you try to figure out why the case was. Like say, we had a huge huge construction project that really boosts up our permits. And we knew that, then we have to bring it down if we're not expecting another big, because we're not gonna have that revenue. And we should rely on that revenue if we don't know what's gonna come in. So we try to make sure that we're really cautious when we're doing these revenues coming in. And as you can see from the revenues from the taxes is 1.731 million. This could change based on some debt issues that I'll talk about later.
And the taxes from utility went down from 135 to 103.
It's a complicated calculation that, the auditors they have this big calculation that happens. And this is what that number came out to be for next year.
Remind me what taxes from utility really represents.
It has to do, oh gosh, I don't think I have that spreadsheet that shows all of the calculation, but it has to do, I can get you that information. I don't have that right.
Well,
in
let's
front
start
of
with something simple. The utility, I assume, is the water and sewer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as you can see in years past, it's gone up and down too.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something to come back to.
You feel okay about the estimated 24 for building permits? You're proposing $65,000 in building permits
So-
when we've only collected 23.7 so far
Well,
this
the
year.
reason why is
This-
because the apartment
gone.
complex,
Yeah. They were anticipating last year that we would have gotten
Oh.
that big amount this year, but we haven't gotten it yet, because obviously their building's on hold, so
yeah, the earliest they could get that right now with our pending litigation will be 2024. Perfect.
How much is it?
It's gonna be in that $20,000-$30,000 range permit.
That still doesn't make our budget.
And some other additional growth that we're anticipating in the area.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got those two fourplexes up on the hill and some other just Gateway Meadows usually pops up 2 or 3 a year. That should be enough to,
And we're looking at a potential larger investment on the south side of town too, as long as that goes forward.
I just wanted to bring your attention to, up a little bit further, there is, an expenditure restraint under intergovernmental revenues.
yeah.
And, we filled out the form for the state earlier this year, and we do not qualify for that in 2024.
Yep.
So you fill it out in 23, you get it in 24, and the bummer about that is that it's gonna be a 2-year thing, they're gonna lock it, the state's gonna lock that for 2 years,
Of course
so,
they are.
yeah, so, and then they're gonna kind of reset things. So because we don't get it in 24, we won't get it in 25.
That's the way that works.
Yeah,
We get it some years, we don't
Yep,
get it other
exactly.
years, and we
But
never
that's-
really let that be what drives us on
Yeah.
what we have to spend.
Yep.
They're trying to clamp it down artificially, and it's just kind of a Mickey Mouse way to do it.
so,
And then in there too, you can see our $75,000 increase from our shared revenue too, that's happening from
yeah.
those past.
This forfeitures collected, that line that's green there, that's done at the end of the year with the journal entry. So it doesn't show like that we've received anything, but that's gonna happen at the end of the year, that it gets
Because
transferred
that's
out of the courts into,
Right, because there's a timing thing there. They don't actually happen till the end of the year, right?
right. And so I talked to Jen and we just kind of ballpark 24,000 for next year, for 2024, so. Hopefully it'll be in and around that amount.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Just
So-
so open there.
Yeah, in your book, I had just gotten to talk to Jen about that, and so in your book it says 5, but I double checked with her and it should be 24, so.
Makes sense, because that's kind of in line
Right.
with the low end
Yeah.
of what we've received in
Right,
past
right.
years.
So, let's see.
Like I will say, this document's ever changing day to day, hour to
Yeah.
hour, so.
Yeah. Understood. As soon as you print it, it'll change.
And I think it was Neil and I talked about the other revenue this morning, and that was 10,000 we had in there 10,000, but that's not, we double checked and that we are not gonna get any more ARPA funds, that was from the county. And those are all done.
Yeah, yeah.
So I zeroed that out. Further down, just to note, we have all these like tower rentals
Yep,
and, those have got to go to the water
yeah,
utility.
yeah.
They hadn't been
One second
previously.
here. That's
although-
page 3 on the documents that you have. I just want to make sure they look at.
Sure. Just so,
Yeah, we found that earlier
we
this
found that
year.
earlier this year, and now, because we know we have to fix it, you know, at least in my mind, we need to, but, the total of all of those things, on the screen here, I have this in yellow. It's at 87,152,
Yep,
and it's,
Are the doors locked again?
if you look further down, the transfer in from water fund, they're
Yeah.
making up that 87,000 because they owe us for repayment of well 4.
oh.
So
okay.
normally we would get 59,000 from them, but the 87,152, they're gonna influx that money from the utilities, so that's a wash. So this year, we're good to go.
Oh, I see. We put it in the utility and then they paid us some extra for the expenditures on well 4. So
Yes,
it all ends
Yeah.
up coming out even.
yep, so
Okay.
we're made whole in all of that.
Okay,
So,
but we can't count on that next year. As far as well 4
Right.
being,
Right, and I don't know if there's any other money that's outstanding from, that the utility owes the village. I think that will be the end of that
yeah, I think it is.
for the additional.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okey-doke.
Anybody have any questions as we're kind of just rolling through these?
Nope. I'm good.
Okay,
And another area of revenue that we can increase would be sale of assets and sale of land. So those are the other possible avenues of more revenue in the future. That we could add to the budget this year, the budget for 2024
Yeah.
to help close that gap of proceeds of land sales.
do we want to head on to the legislative, the next tab? Or I can go in order of what you guys have, admin?
Admin's next.
Yeah.
So I think legislative is the first.
This is the first one, but
Oh, okay,
admin's,
I'll go to admin, all right. Okay, so we'll go to admin, and, one of the things that Neil and I talked about this morning, he was wondering why the 2023 budget for wages for administration was so much more than what we're budgeting this year. And I can't find that figure in the paperwork or the spreadsheet that we have that's for all of the wages. I don't see where the 264 came from, but I do know that the 5% that we've kind of thrown in there for a placeholder, that's this 233,000.
We just don't have to tap for this legislative.
Well, I'm not seeing,
So they're looking at,
Oh,
they're
it's-
looking at
oh.
legislative, and you're talking about.
yeah, the first
Okay.
page
sorry.
under admin
Okay,
tab is
It's legislative.
legislative.
Okay, sorry, we'll go to that.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Okay, so,
25,000.
this is pretty straightforward
Yeah,
as far as what.
we don't
you
get
guys
a,
get
we don't
paid.
get a raise again this year, huh?
oh, this is for us.
Yeah.
Legislative is us.
Legislative is the
Yep.
board.
Got it.
The
Yeah.
board,
All right,
and
thank
then-
you.
And then the boards and commissions is the, they get $20 a meeting for several of these other committee meetings.
Yep,
And that's something that the board had approved a year ago, right? For
Yep.
the $20?
Yep.
Okay. If there's any questions on any of these,
One thing that did increase is our code updating book.
yeah,
We weren't doing that regularly, so we make sure we budget enough, so we update our code regularly.
yep,
right.
So that way, when people go online and look at our code, it's the most recent code, not an updated code.
And the publishing, we put it closer, we put it at 12 because that's close to what we've been spending, so
yeah.
we want to make
It's-
sure we budget
Realistic.
for what it's gonna
Yep.
be, yeah. And that's for all the minutes and the notices that go in the paper and things like that for meetings and,
What a surprise. Legal counsel general went up.
The last 2 years.
We've been
yeah,
where that that service out.
Right.
Okay,
Why are we at 30 for that for next year?
Yeah,
'Cause that's
well,
closer to where
we've
what we're
spent
spending
26
now.
already and
Yeah.
we still have some more legal issues
and in
to
twenty
get
twenty-two,
over.
we also spent 30,000, so it's been a trend upwards. We jumped up greatly in the last 2 years.
And I'm sure there's still some bills in the pipeline for
Oh,
the
yeah.
rest of the year,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Okay,
Right, okay.
now we can talk about the admin
Sorry.
salaries. I was just
Okay,
getting
so
into
now,
that.
now you see the, where the 2023 budget was and the proposed for 2024 is,
Okay.
is definitely more accurate.
So what was the base that you added the 5% to?
The
It
base-
obviously wasn't the
It's
264.
not the 264.
It's an accurate calculation of all the wages that we've taken from administration.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, at the current rates and,
at the current rates
yes.
plus,
okay,
yeah. And I have all of the, we don't need to go to that yet. I have all the spreadsheet that has all of those, all that information in there.
yeah, you got all
So
the
let's see it,
individual,
And the
People.
funny thing is we're looking at the budget like this, but you're actually working on changing all of our codes, so it might look different in the future.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah,
yeah, that's been a process that we're going
Simplify
through,
it.
so, yeah. Yeah, the account numbers are gonna be different
Yeah,
moving forward
no, that's
after
fine.
this, so that'll be a big transition.
But yeah, this administration wages are accurate for next year's purposes of how we calculate the wages.
Inclusive of the 5% that's built in?
It's got the 5% with
Yes.
all the wages of how it's being figured. So
okay,
you can basically cancel out 2023 on this
Right,
because we calculated our own way to make sure all the wages were accounted for in each portion of the departments.
What would it be with a 0% increase?
I don't have
What's
anything that says 0%.
What's the 2% increase? Oh, we won't know that off the top number right now.
Well, a 2% increase over all of the departments, police, admin, court, water, sewer, public works, is the amount that changes over 2023 is 26,000.
So instead of it being 233, it would be 206?
No, she's saying for the full,
all staff,
all staff.
all
Okay.
departments.
All the staff, right, all the staff, and that's including the fringe.
Because keep in mind, these
Okay.
are just numbers we plugged in to make sure that we weren't going to underestimate our revenue spots.
Okay.
We do have numbers for what increases would look like for the whole picture, to see what it would look like for the whole picture. And the benefits are based on the salaries too, so.
And what are wages maintenance for?
So that's for, like the building,
Oh, building maintenance, okay. Oh, so if somebody from Public Works comes and spends time, they charge that
Yep,
account?
yep.
Okay. Okay.
And now we're getting some of the expenditures for the administration, and as you see, there's different colors laid out. One of the ways to make the budget balance would being a borrow for maintenance and expenditures of equipment. So that's one, when I said there's two possible ways that we can get it to be a borrow for maintenance and equipment, which would roughly be about $150,000 that we would have to borrow, that we could borrow for, that would help balance the budget, but it's moving the revenue from an operating levy to a debt levy.
so what I found out in talking, well, we went to what was that? That levy limit, we went to a levy limit class, basically, to do how to do the worksheet, and, the gentleman that was talking about that said that a lot of municipalities now are looking at doing short-term borrowing for things like this, like, they would take them, like, borrow for 2024 for the maintenance, this is a possibility, so it's just whatever you decide, but we could borrow sometime November, December, the 150,000, if that's what the number is, and then we could, so we could borrow the full amount and have the payment due next year sometime. So we would limit the amount of interest we would have to pay. We would put that on top of, in the summary where it showed the debt levy, we would add it to the debt levy. So we would levy for it and pay it off next year. So it's a
Because you
short-term
get it
thing,
in the levy
because you can get
payment.
it in that, yeah.
Okay, and that's why you gotta do the borrow before the end of this
Right.
year, so you know
And
how
then you can
much
say,
to
you can
plug
pay
in.
it, next year, and then what he said is a lot of times they'll do it without a prepayment penalty, so if you want to, you could pay it off in April when we've gotten the majority of our taxes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that would be one way that a lot of municipalities are looking at that, just to save themselves some of that interest payments. So if you borrow for things and it's out
Well,
3,
and
4, or 5 years,
and it takes a
paying
little
so much
pressure
more
off the
interest,
property
yeah.
tax levy
Right,
that's
right.
limited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can only borrow for maintenance, equipment, you can't borrow for wages or
Yeah.
basic stuff that you would do anyways.
Right.
So it'd have to be certain categories. The categories that are yellow, are blue,
Blue, yeah.
have already been signed out by our bond council as eligible expenses that we could do that for.
So walk me through that in layman's terms. If we chose to do that option, that would essentially be adding additional dollars to the debt levy now,
Yep.
which would mean taxes go up next year for taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it would increase.
That's the short version of
And
it.
that's why I said
Right,
that's one of the options we have.
We borrow $150,000 and make the taxpayers pay it. Okay.
Right.
To help with basically the day-to-day levy of
Yep.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that that's the raising the taxes option. I just
Yep.
want to make sure that that's out there.
Right, and as we get closer and get more of the dollars and everything that the county and the school and those things come into effect, we can look at what our portion of the mill rate, what impact that would be to our taxpayers.
Mhm.
So as we get closer to things, we can dial in on those.
Right.
That'll help make those decisions easier.
And none of these decisions for additional revenue are gonna be easy. The truth of the matter is our contracts are going up, our costs are going up just like everyone else. We're trying to find ways to make it work.
Is there any other questions on the admin?
I'm assuming the 2023 budget numbers for fringe benefits are higher than the 24s because of the readjustment of the wages in 24. And they're corresponding, I mean, the fringes are a percent of the salary, so if you lowered the
Right,
salaries,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just cross out all of 23 and now, don't
Yeah.
look at it because we changed the formula a little bit.
Then let's get to the last thing I got a question about here, and that's the expenses allocation to other funds. Just for some of the people that are new here, and to remind me, because my memory isn't as good as it used to be, the 193,000 is for admin efforts done on the behalf of other departments, and that's how you charge your time to them? Is that,
I
kind of-
believe that that's correct, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
and then capital projects is what the project management stuff is? The work on building projects and that kind of thing, or
That's
capital, the
correct.
projects we're doing? Because you're gonna spend time in the admin department managing like mill house demo and things getting done as far as projects for the village. Okay, so the question I wanted to ask is, why is it 0 year to date?
That is all done at the end of the year.
Yeah, we talked
Oh,
about this
okay.
too,
Yeah.
that,
This is the journal entries that get done in December.
and we talked about this last week too, that we might be doing transfers at the beginning of the year so people actually know what's available in the budget instead of at the end of the year.
Right.
So that way, I mean, whether you do it in the end of the year or the beginning of the year, it doesn't matter for bookkeeping, but for department heads, it'd be easier to see what's been taken out of their account already, so they have a better picture
And for budgeting.
and for budgeting.
So is the amount just a fixed amount, or does it really reflect the amount of effort done by the admin
Well, we're
department?
we're budgeting that, so I mean, you can take that out right away from the year.
I guess what I'm asking is, you incur it during the course of the year,
Right.
couldn't we track it and make the journal entry like quarterly on what the
Or-
actuals are?
Or even 6 months in, or, yeah, that's
That's all I'm
Something better
saying.
It's-
dictate to the department.
something-
I hate to
better
see
than what it
zeros
is.
on things
Yeah,
when
I
I know
agree,
there's
I
real
agree.
money involved.
right.
Okay.
So that's gonna be something that I'd like to work on for next year.
Okay. Okay. Oh, and there's the general fund transfers. Oh, okay, that's the library,
Oh, yeah.
the airport, the municipal court. Okay.
So one thing that, I don't know for sure, looking back. So this $7,500, the airport asks for this each year. One thing that I asked our auditors about too, there's a portion of the bond that was done in 2019 that is supposed to be getting charged to, the airport. Like the village pays it and it's, 7,200, 7,300. And I'm wondering if, because that wasn't listed on the budget previous years as something that the airport was responsible for, like, there was this transfer in, but there was never like the transfer out to cover that. And so I'm not sure if they were just thinking that we shouldn't do the $7,500 into the transfer to the airport because we're making that payment each year for that borrowing.
Wouldn't surprise me.
So,
So let's investigate that
Yeah.
and figure out what's what.
right, I just
I mean,
didn't
it's
know
not a
if you
huge
had any-
number, but
Does anybody remember? That's what I'm asking. Yeah, no, okay. Because I think that if the village is paying for something on behalf of the airport,
2019, a lot of things got done that a lot of
Right.
us didn't know about,
right, and so
especially small scale stuff.
in my brain, I'm thinking, well, if we're transferring that out, then we should be accounting for them
Well-
paying that or allocating, otherwise we don't transfer.
It'd be
it
nice to
and
know
say it's
what we're
because-
transferring it in for, number
Right.
one. Number
Well, it's in
two,
the CIP,
Yeah, we would send, our cash match usually is about that amount for, any FA, bond from credits.
so that was the intention, is what it was to be transferred in for each year?
Yeah,
was
'cause they have
to-
like a 10-to-1 grant match.
yeah,
Or,
it's
yeah,
90-10, I
90-10,
think, on
yeah.
most of the FAA stuff. So this gives them a little pocket of money to do the match with.
That's the only thing I can think of.
That's
Okay.
the only thing, yeah.
Okay,
that
let's
was thinking,
see if we
but-
can track that down.
Yeah,
Not a huge priority,
Right.
but
I just wanted to see if anybody had any idea.
And the airport commission at that point was wondering too.
Jesus.
yipper.
All right, so next.
Airport.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, that library amount, we're basically statutory required to give that amount.
Yeah.
So that one is the reason why it's that amount.
Is there a formula or something that we?
There's a percentage of, the
Their
state has,
expenses maybe?
the state has, a formula for the amount that
Okay.
we have to give them.
Yeah.
So that one is dictated by the
And
state.
we haven't seen anything of their budget yet. I know Ann's working on,
Yeah.
with the transfer and
But in terms of library budget, the only thing that really pertains to you guys is the amount.
That.
Yeah.
And they told me they weren't gonna ask for more than 139.
Yeah.
So that's
So we're
what we're
good.
plugging there.
Okay.
I really received all of them.
Is it, which one's next to you?
Airport.
It's very small. What's else?
Okay.
We'll get another reminder. It's not a lot.
What's the $45,000 in revenue for the airport? Miscellaneous revenue?
I'm not sure.
45,000 at the airport? Oh, today?
Yeah.
Outside
One
of,
second, I can pull it up.
Two, five, zero, 2, 3, 4, 6, 3, 4, 0, 0, 0, 5.
Yep. So this is.
Oh, those
the
were the
ARPA
grants. Those were the state funding that they applied for.
Oh, okay.
that they received for CR, SAA.
And then they did get some ARPA.
And then some ARP and refer.
I'm
These were
assuming
stuff
that's done.
that is done.
Yeah.
Those are full amounts that they've received. They're not, I don't. think
And they're
there's
not
any
recurring,
requests
so
for
it's a
that.
one and done.
Ben had done that. And they got the remainder payments beginning of this year for those.
I'm just curious, on the airport manager contract, we're 56% of the way through the budgeted amount. Is it just lumpy payments?
They don't invoice us regularly.
Okay. Well, that's annoying.
Yeah, the number that is budgeted is probably exactly what he'll get paid.
The 1830.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did we just pick 20 because that seemed smart?
I don't
Or
even know if
did
they
they
would
tell
go
us?
up. No, I don't think, have you talked to anybody at the airport about increasing airport manager wages?
Nope, I've not got any fee on that one.
Yeah, so it's been the same since I've been here.
That would be a good one to investigate, to double check, but the airport should have limited impact on the overall levy as their funds are not levy funds.
They're also balanced, so I'm not worried about them.
Yeah. So I put in here this note, principal and note interest for 24.
For the bottom of the airport.
The debt expense,
Yeah.
Expense.
because if it's their debt, it should be allocated to the airport, should it not?
That's their portion of that debt.
Right. So,
That's the potential other side of that 7,500,
Yes.
maybe.
possibly,
Yeah,
yes,
it
Okay.
shows up on our debt reports that they owe us that amount per year.
right.
And in actual fact, we're paying that out of the general fund?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Well, 2 years, well.
No, 23, it looks like 22 it came out. 21 it did come out, 22 it did, 21 it did.
Okay, so that's the first one, 22. Yeah, so 2 years worth, yeah.
Okay.
Next, court. Okay, moving on to court. Nothing really changes much in here,
Or fire.
consistent for,
Fire the next one?
I have municipal court, or is it fire?
Yeah.
Oh,
You're
sorry,
in-
Court next.
you know why? Got it, okay, we'll do fire, sorry.
I'm just reading what's in front of me.
Yep, thank you. So this is what they've requested.
Okay. Wow.
And they have all of these, the amounts as far as wages all separated. When in fact, when I get their payroll, the only thing that's separated out is, I have it under firefighting or inspections. They don't separate it for me.
Oh, as far as drills.
So
and
where you see
meetings.
that, where you look at 2023, the actuals, those are the only two areas that I
Yeah.
get information
Data.
to charge. They don't break it down for me, so that's why the difference.
A hell of an increase.
Keep in mind, in 23, they were given a wage increase that was not reflected in the budget.
That was
Oh,
22.
Excuse me, yeah.
22 was a significant wage increase that they got, that wasn't in the budget.
Where's Paul?
Like I said, I apologize for this. I did not realize in past that department had to invite to this meeting, so that falls on me.
Okay.
We can, in our next session, we can make sure that they're all here.
So,
And they'll get the information we talked about tonight too.
Oh, yeah.
so
Yep.
They can respond.
Yeah, so if there's a specific question, we can, give the
Yeah.
information to you or.
yeah, 'cause it's like 40% higher than the 23 budget.
Probably better get some explanation on
Yeah.
some of this.
Yeah, this is, can we just move past this? Because
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk about that right now.
Okay,
Well, I have
And keep in mind, fire budget, most of it,
Okay,
gets
flip
billed
that back.
to the township of.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable about going
What's your
forward with
next
that
tab? Municipal court?
personally.
No,
From fire,
yeah,
we go fire,
we should do,
fire,
we flip backwards, we should do court.
court.
Yeah, let's do court real quick. This is pretty straightforward, there's not a lot. Just to see if anybody has any questions on that one, and if you don't, we can just move on.
Where are we at with the cooperative court?
That's dead. The cooperative court fell through. St. Croix gave us notification in August that our ticket count was too low to combine with them.
Are we legally
Are you
required to
kidding?
provide a court?
If you
More
don't
municipal
provide a,
tickets.
If you want, yeah,
If you want to be able to
enforce your ordinance.
enforce ordinances with
Yeah.
writing citations?
And
So
also,
what are we doing right now? We're just.
Yeah, I mean,
We have a court right now. Our problem is not, we have,
As a judge.
we have a judge right now, a temporary judge, Judge Danielson. So we're having an operating court right now.
Okay.
what revenue is it providing?
Revenue provides, it's,
it was that like 24,
that was a $24,000 in
Yeah.
collections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
And then the $3,000 from Drescher that we get a subsidy, and then we get 40,000.
If we didn't have a court, from what I understand, I think actually St. Croix Falls has decided that they're just getting rid of their municipal court
That's a
entirely.
little different. A little background on that. The reason why we're looking at a co-op with St. Croix is because they had a judge, we had a clerk, and we thought we could help each other out there, because their clerk was retired. They decided to pull out of a conversation with us due to ticket amounts. Since they no longer have a clerk, they decided to disband their court for the time being, but it sounds like they plan to start the court back up in 2024, right?
Right, and ironically enough, when we've been full staff, despite them having a 5-lane US highway, Osceola's had more tickets than them and was pretty sustainable. But now with, of course, our staffing the way they are, and a lot of times no coverage, like today, I was the only car on for 11 and a half hours, running from call to call, there's not a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
So our tickets are way down for that reason simply.
that's totally.
There's more to the whole St. Croix thing, but that's the gist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were told from their administrator.
Yeah.
What he told their council was a little different, but that's what the email we got, Drescher and us got from the administrator, St. Croix.
How's code enforcement handled in municipalities who don't have court?
I understand in St. Croix Falls case, those tickets flow into the county court. That's what I had been
So
led to
the
believe.
county gets
So the
all
county ended up having to deal with, and this is not a researched answer, but this is what I heard
And
from,
then St. Croix gets billed.
I don't know how that works.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah,
But I think that it
The
would.
court's
flow
not gonna
into
do
the-
it for free.
Yeah, so-
Your municipal court,
Gonna cost you
by
money
far,
anyway.
is the most control you can have. And you're also garnering, not that it's a revenue base, but you have revenue that is directly coming into the municipality. If you contract with the county as far as the court system is, you go back to the circuit court. That's it.
Not only that, but a traffic ticket in municipal court, say for speeding, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's like $124. And at the circuit court or state level, it's like
Yeah,
$246.
it's very expensive.
Plus
Far more
our
expensive.
police personnel have to drive to Balsam Lake anytime they go to the
Exactly.
court, right?
Initial appearances and for all court.
So if it's here, it's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of add-ons to those circuit court citations, just a lot, so.
And you know, we guarantee the court can see some of these cases, right? They might throw us on
What do you mean, which court?
the county, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, all prosecutorial discretion, we have full county level, and they won't check with us, like, a lot of times locally, the prosecutors say, we want to see on this case, we're looking at doing this, and we'll say, well, absolutely not, because it's the second time they spray painted stuff, we're not cutting any break, we want restitution first and then this, so, they work with you more directly that way. So,
sorry for my little side conversation. I was asking about the summary for the court right now shows a negative balance of $4,000. But I was curious if it included the updated forfeiture number that we talked about. Instead of 5 that had been in printed material for 24 or whatever.
Well, that is that's what the court, like, transfers to the village
Okay,
for that portion of
so that's a different
funding. Yeah,
question than
yeah.
whether or not, so
Yep.
even with that number, the court is still in the hole $4,000. Not that justice is about money, but
Right,
that's where the
I
balance comes out.
believe so, yeah.
And
We can tweak some things.
If you look at the past few years, it's always run negative.
Yeah,
It's not a moneymaker. Never thought it would be.
right.
It'd be nice if it could just break even.
It has been sustainable and has broken even, but we talked about it, we did.
Yeah,
You know, we used
full
to have,
staff.
we have part-time officers that would work grants, because we get these grants. We're in a co-op grant right now, I think that expires kind of every year, we're in a grant with the county and other agencies where you have to work certain nights together, which has been great for traffic safety, but it's also good for numbers. So you just let everybody work those now.
Yeah.
Have us for 10 months, 11 months.
Yep.
So,
Okay, I think the next is police.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody has any questions specifically?
Did we have the same issue with salaries in 23 being not accurate here?
No, I don't think. No, I think it was only admin that we had that issue.
Okay,
As you can see, which one? Oh, never mind.
On the training budget, and this is just for my more education and everything else. It looks like you've got a fair amount left that you might be able to spend this year, and I was just wondering if that money's been spent, or if this staffing's preventing the use of the training budget, or kind of what the story is there.
So again, it comes down to staffing, so we want to send, like next year, I asked for an increase because we're losing, Eric Lehman, he's a firearms instructor and a field training officer.
Mhm.
So we need to train someone to replace him to instructor school.
Mhm.
So this year, our officers mainly had just in service. And a lot of the training, like Officer Bach went to 2-week supervisor school. That training is relatively cheap cost-wise, but where the expense is the reimbursement for hotel and meals each day.
Yeah.
So the training costs themselves, maybe $400, $300 for a course. So I think we're good now, if everything's up to date, that's where we should be for the training, for this year. But in past years, if we have part-time officers and we have more full-time, they all have to go to 24 hours of training at least.
yeah,
So that's why we're a little lower now this year.
I also want to point one more thing up in the wages area that, there was a request for another officer if we could afford it. And that's what it would be all in for one officer with wages included, the one that's up there on the.
That 115 that's
115,
highlighted in yellow
yeah.
over here.
I just wanted you to see that, that's what it would cost to have additional
Okay.
staff.
I have a question. The budget for 23 is 383,000 and the budget for 24 is 406,000 just for the full-time wages. And that, according to my math, is a 6% increase, not a 5%.
Is that because of the increase to
Bach.
To
I
Bach.
think- Yeah, I think that's.
increasing back from,
Oh, from a
Yes, lieutenants,
patrolman to
uh,
lieutenant. Okay, thank you.
So let's go to the next line then.
the part-time wages?
$18,000 more than this year?
Yep, so what happened with that is last year, I provided 2 sets of numbers. First number was like 54,000, which is what we had previous years because we were short-staffed, and I outlined it in my budget where it covers all the officers. At that point, it was Kelly time, sick time, vacation time, training, everything else. That's what it cost at $24 an hour. So last year I provided that number, and I provided 24,000 or right around there. If we hired a full-time officer, that's what it would cost for part-timers to make us 24 hours a day again, with all that stuff I just mentioned. Well, Fran plugged in the $24,000 number last year, even though we didn't get any officers. Well, as it turns out, we didn't have any officers to work or part-timers to hire, so we still had most of that in there. So the number that is in there now is, again, what it would cost to make our department whole 24/7 to cover extra holidays, vacation, meals and wings, traffic direction,
All
extra
that
staffing, at a part-time wage of 24 hours an hour. So that's what that costs.
Okay.
Mhm.
Again, just trying to be realistic as far as what the real cost is.
It's rich. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
rich.
And in past years, it was as high as $68,000.
Yeah, we're not anywhere near those years though. Like
Yeah, it's
part-time
1.65.
officers just don't exist anymore.
Okay. And the blue items are the stuff that is potential.
That's stuff that would be eligible for that borrow that we talked about.
Okay.
We just want to make sure that you could see what it would look like, or what could be borrowed. That's what the blue is for.
Clerical includes what?
Clerical,
That's Jen
Jen
Giller,
Giller.
just for wages.
Okay.
Also, just for my education, this miscellaneous contractual services, what does that mean?
I'm assuming that's probably contract related, right?
yeah, various
I-
contracts that we have.
I actually have that right here. I can read it out for you, but every year it's miscellaneous contractual stuff. In this case, for 2024, our policy number is 2,900 for update, maintenance, and upkeep, make sure it's current. Our backgrounds is $1,800 for clear, it's called for backgrounds and investigations. Crime Star has the annual fee, that's our record management system, for $1,200 a year licensing. Annual radar certifications, $350, annual forms, $160, missed air filters, and for our chambers and stuff is like $1,500 a year. Make sure officers are safe using those chambers. Law books, Adobe $250, iRecord maintenance plan is $27, our record system. And then our time system user fees are based on number of users per year, $50 a month. So kind of a catch-all category to make sure that we stay accurate every year budgeting, and that's what that entails.
Is there anything that drove, I guess I'm looking at actuals, are some of those things due at the end of the year, and so that actual go up and the 12 makes sense once all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Like right now, we haven't bought any of the missed air filters or the hooded vent stuff at $1,500. We haven't bought that yet this year.
Okay.
And I assume once we need to buy them, we will, and if we can stretch it the next year, we will. So we don't buy them just to buy them. We look at the invoices and stuff, but yeah, that's why.
Okay.
And going through the budgets, both Todd and Ron, since I've been talking to them through the whole process, their equipment and operating are running very lean already. There's no really crazy expenditure in either one of those budgets that you can look at and say, why are we paying for that? There's a good reason of why everything is at the rate it's currently at.
Can you just touch on the ammunition numbers?
Yep,
Of
the ammunition
21
numbers increased for this year because, like I said, we have to send probably Officer Tanner Revin to firearms instructor school because Eric Lehman is retiring. We have 2 firearms instructors. So the training itself is only a few $100, but they have to shoot, how many rounds?
For the qualification,
For range instructor school.
range instructor school, it's usually 1,000 rounds of rifle, 1,000 rounds.
Yeah,
But the
so
numbers are going, the numbers down.
Well, the ammo budget number should be increased a little bit. I'm sorry, what number are you going?
It's on the last page.
Last page, it went from,
Okay, which-
8,100 this
8,100
year
for
to
23.
3,800.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I only have my budget, I didn't have your sheets. So that was, remember we sold the squad car, I asked for some of that money to be allocated for the simunitions training stuff.
Oh,
So it was put into that account and the simunitions were purchased. But for next year,
We're back to where it was prior.
it's up a little higher than where it was prior originally because of the need to go to school.
got it.
But it's still, it's lower than the current one, but higher than the year prior.
Yes.
That was a budget amendment we made,
Yes.
was it May about,
Yeah, maybe a little later, but sometime.
oh,
This year.
summer's July, who made it
Yeah.
July, we made a budget amendment in July to increase the ammunition.
I personally think part-time wages is a bit rich on this. We're not gonna hit that number next year. It's not gonna be possible.
We're probably not, but I have had some interest or possibilities for part-time officers to help cover for extra staffing. It's not, I tell you what, last Wheels and Wings and the community fair, having one officer on only till a certain time at night was absolutely ridiculous. We were lucky and fortunate that we didn't have the incidents like we've had in past years at different places.
Yeah.
So it's important that we have some part-time officers to draw upon for events like that, to help cover shifts on busy weekends. You know, Officer Bach has young kids and wants off for Halloween, and we usually always have 2 cars on for that. I want to come on and cover for that, but situation like that, we got to make sure there's ample coverage for the public as well. So my hope is to have some part-time budget hours, but I agree, Brad, we're not gonna get back to the levels we had before.
Yeah, I mean, with your Wheels and Wings example or community fair, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think we probably need to have that conversation with both those organizations next year. They may need to contract that stuff out to bring in some additional security work because the village just isn't going to be able to provide it with our current level of staffing. So we can definitely partner with them and provide what resources we have available, but we're not going to be able to provide adequate services for those kinds of things. And they're going to have to pick up the slack. A couple $1,000 for each organization to pay some part-time security guards or other security organizations, or just pay the county to bring a couple of deputies out. I mean, something, but yeah. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
That's a good soapbox.
So we're not changing anything tonight, or are we gonna
No.
change
If you
something?
give
or-
me direction on, I can try to figure
Yeah.
out different numbers.
I would lower part-time wages.
Okay.
That's how I feel. I mean, you guys can speak to what you think should be done, but I think we're just not going to hit 42.6 next year.
I guess I think that falls into kind of a general thought that I was holding until maybe we were done with the review. But I think that, to me, there's an opportunity to think through the various things the village does, from providing security at events to hanging banners to all of these things. And I'm not sure what we charge fees for and what we don't charge fees for. But I don't look at, this budget does not suggest that there's room for us to continue doing those kinds of things out of the goodness of our heart. And I certainly want to see the village be a participant and be helpful, and, it's good for the town, it's good for the community. I support banners, but I think that we should be thoughtful, and I would really encourage a direction that would ask for, seriously sitting down and thinking, okay, these are the banners we're asked to hang every year. This is what it costs us to do this. Here's a fee structure that recognizes that time and energy, so that the village can recoup that effort. And I think that your comment about policing falls directly in line with that as well. We want those events to happen. I want those events to happen. I obviously want them to be done safely. And I think that we're in a position where we need to share that burden a little bit more with the folks who are organizing those events. And that's the way it be.
Yep.
Yeah, the other aspect of this is, with the budget and potentially getting more part-time officers. But then if you contract with, leave it up to them to contract with, a private, security, whatever, the numbers are still, the influx of people coming in to the municipality is still putting the pressure on. You're still going to have law enforcement involved in EMS if there's an incident. The security people are not going to be handling or making, throwing, you got out of control people or whatever. They're going to be calling 911 just like anybody else. So the presence of law enforcement, I guess, is to me is a big priority as far as these bigger crowds. I'm not really comfortable with private security. Not that there's
And they can hire deputies then.
It has it.
County deputies, they can hire them. They'll contract out.
If they're available. So
It ain't cheap, but they'll contract out.
with them.
It's about $70 an hour to contract a
They'll try
county
to-
deputy.
Would the fair board pay that or Wheels and Wings?
I think we
Would they
can,
pay?
I think we can mandate that coverage be available. And if we don't have the people, then they need to fill a gap. That could be a condition of approval of the event application.
Yeah, I think, we have to, consider providing the best protection and services possible. And that would be, to me, I would definitely like to see a uniform and certified officer.
For sure.
that.
Yep.
That's my spin.
Ron, your 406 proposed for next year for full-time wages, does that that's predicated on what's been approved for the police department for next year?
I did not address wages in my budget request. I think this might be the placeholder that administration put in for everybody.
5%.
Yep, it's the 5% with the increase to BOC, and then that 85 to 95 rings that we have for the.
Assuming fully staffed.
Right,
Yeah, assuming full
yes,
staff,
it's-
yes.
yeah,
Assuming that we have the two new officers hired.
Oh, that was my question.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, currently we're.
That gets us to where we were 6 months ago, right?
Right,
Yes.
Not fully
Still not where
staffed
we
in
were a few years
the
ago.
concept that you think of fully staffed with
So
X
it
number of
brings us to
officers.
the number that we had at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
2023.
Okay.
everybody done with the police, we'll move on to public works. The first couple pages are just the summary, everything just files into that, so you can kind of see overall what the budget numbers look like. And then each of the next sheets go into, streets, streetlights, stormwater, street signs, garage, and we can go through each of those one by one if you'd like, or. First one is streets.
What's the high level right now? 10,000 foot view. What's Todd proposing?
He's just basically on each of those tabs that he has, it's, the wage numbers are their wages with the 5% increase, so all of that, and then everything else is, I think, pretty status quo. I don't think he's got any super inflated numbers
Yeah,
for any big,
Their whole budget is up 8%, and if you got a 5% wage increase in there, that means the
yeah.
non-wage stuff isn't going up much.
No, exactly. And there's some items in there again that we could
Could be
possibly borrow
Borrowed
for.
for, yeah.
And keep in mind, we are budgeting more for the snow contract as we have seen increase in that fees too.
We have no control over what happens with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
but-
why we budget a little bit more, because we've been under, we've been over budget on that one, so.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you
where
can't,
is that? Oh, ice and snow supplies, or where?
It would be under the snow contract. Under streets. Equipment and operating.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Because as you can see, we're already 130% over budget from last year. Over budget.
Right.
Are we still plowing township roads?
That's a tricky question because there's some joint ventures on those. So technically, it would be a part of the township road that we plow. But we own the other 75% of it.
Is the township plowing any roads for the village?
That one, like I said, that's Simmon where they own like a little sliver of the road. We plow that one. But revenue wise, no, we can look into opportunities to see what we're not billing for, to make sure that we're billing out, or what type of agreement we have in place with the townships to make sure it's equitable and fair for everyone.
The LRIP grant is basically dead then on that road?
I got a lot
That
of-
project's not gonna happen?
So I will, if you want to update the LRAP grant that we have, I proposed to them that basically their share would be about $97,000 to get that.
Right.
done. I propose that we do a 3-year intergovernmental loan with them, that we'll foot the bill for the project, we'll borrow for the project, but they'd pay us $33,000 a year to help pay for that. they didn't like that idea. They said the most that they'll offer for that is $44,000 for that project.
We still have a MOU for them to do maintenance on that portion of the road that they own.
I will double check on that one.
Right. That topic needs to come forward. I mean, if this LRIP grant opportunity is dead,
It was planned out.
then we really need to move that conversation forward towards separating from the partnership there.
I
And
was putting the agenda on November.
it's unfortunate. It really is.
I was putting on the November meeting to discuss further as we kind of hit an impasse in that talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They can plow their own road now, or we'll bill them for what we're going to plow. That's unfortunate. That was a $600,000 grant that just disappeared
Gone.
because somebody was mad that they didn't get told about it right away. All right, moving on.
But otherwise, Todd's done a good job of keeping his equipment and operating costs down, just like the other departments have done too. They're really giving the edict to make sure that we keep those operating costs down as much as we can, because we know that we don't, basically, we ran a deficit for 2 consecutive years, so we knew we didn't have much room to increase.
Yeah.
anywhere.
Yep.
So I don't know if you have any specific questions on any of the public works tabs.
I have a question about the streetlights. Not to get super nitpicky.
Go ahead.
They are asking for $13,000 in wages for public streetlights, but it appears to me that they have gotten nowhere near that amount in 21 or 22, nor do they appear to be getting close to that in 23. And I'm curious if there's any backstory there, or if this is aspirational.
We did all the
Or-
wages.
No,
No, we as admin did all the wages. The departments didn't do the wages, so I'm trying to figure that one out.
Okay, well then I'll take the tone out of it. I guess I'm just curious what.
it's
That was-
an
yeah,
it's,
wasn't a tone. That wasn't a
Neil,
tone.
for the budget, it's an allocation of where we think we're gonna spend
No, I,
the effort.
Oh,
And
I
it
think-
doesn't always play out that way,
I
but
know. Yeah, I'll take care of it.
What's that?
the end result is the sum of all those labor charges across all those activities equals the 3 guys we own.
I think there might be a little.
So it doesn't matter where you spend it, you're never gonna spend more than the wages of those 3 guys.
We gotta quiet them down.
Sure. I guess it just seems,
If,
if we're not spending time on streetlights, then what are we spending time on?
Double checking
Sorry.
something.
go look at the other activities and see what's over, because
No, but-
something's over.
Can I speak here if you want
Sure,
this?
sure.
22 is, I think there might be a mistake, and I have to look in a little further for it.
Oh, okay. Well,
Um,
I'm putting a notation on the side of this.
Because if you look at prior years, we were nowhere near that number either. I'm guessing there are some fat fingers in 23, and we just carry that number over in 24.
And
Because-
I think, so, I didn't mean to interrupt, but in the spreadsheet that has all the wages, there was like this percentage for this percentage for that. And so I used what that previous percentages were to break those all out.
Yeah.
So it's just.
But it's-
Probably, it'll just move to a different,
Yeah, what
One of
we
their
do
other
is
tabs.
figure out how much those 3 guys cost,
yeah,
and then we allocate their costs to those various activities,
yeah.
which may not be the most accurate in looking at the
Obviously, this
actuals.
one wasn't.
So we need to go back and tweak how we allocate it, but the bottom line is
Yeah.
the cost for
I
the
was
public
just
works.
wondering,
Hold on.
I just wanted to know
Oh, good catch, Neil.
why we've spent $1,200, but we're budgeting 13,000
Yeah.
for lights. And I understand that it may not, I'm not suggesting it's gonna alter the top line number. I just am curious.
No, it's a good catch, because we want to make sure we allocate the money in the proper area.
That was mainly it, it's
Because
just to
when they
understand
go after
like,
grants and stuff, and certain, sometimes they ask for what are you budgeting, what are your expenses in
Yeah.
certain areas, so
Mhm.
it's a good catch, and we'll make sure that we allocate those in the correct area to better replicate what they're actually.
Because you could essentially, you could wind up cutting that and then pay for this dearly down the line if you didn't. And that's a good question to
Yeah.
ask.
just
No,
to-
that is a good question.
But we need to get that more
If
defined.
you look at
You're right.
streets, what 75% of the year has been spent so far, we've lived. And yet the street wages are 86% of the budget already expended. So that's what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
if it isn't spent on streetlights, it's being spent elsewhere.
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that it was being wasted.
But we should-
My
No, no,
question
no.
was
We
just
should track
around
how the allocation is.
accuracy.
If we
It's
take
really
it there,
more
we have to
accurate.
put it somewhere
Yeah,
else.
yep.
And then I want to make one other note too, if you look at your stormwater part of Public Works.
Yeah.
Remember earlier this year, I asked you if you want to create a stormwater utility. The reason being is you can see the amount of money we spent on our stormwater in the past 3 years. $17, $3,000, $6,000, $3,000. I asked Todd, when's the last time we smoke tested for I&I? When's the last time we television for cracks for our stormwater? His answer was never. This is why I was talking about a utility. We currently do not have enough money to replace problems if they arise,
Or even find them
or even find them to help mitigate some of the stuff.
until something floods.
So if we created a utility, we would have to take the $6,000 over the levy. So it's not about saving money in the levy, because that money then would be collected in a utility. The utility would be a per unit basis that people pay on the utility bills. That will allow us to help pay for things like our street sweeper, allow us to do some of this testing, allow us to use that towards street projects that we do. So things get curbed and gutter. So we can actually run our stormwater to help the flow and avoid things like contamination with the river. We're a river community. This is stuff that we should be conscious about.
Yeah, because I think there's 2 storm drains on River Street, which is at the bottom of the hill. Everything flows downhill.
But
and
that's
it ends
a
up there.
conversation for another day. As you
Yeah.
can see, we're barely putting anything into the stormwater as is. I just want you guys to realize that that's the conversation we're having. And that Angela's going to come up in a few months to describe that further. If that's something that you'd like to see continue, just let me know. Or if you want to see this continue in the budget too, I guess that's another aspect.
Yeah. Me personally, I would like to see continue towards that, to add it in. It just makes a lot of sense. Because we've gone a long time without really knowing what's going on under there. And I mean, I'm all for, sometimes there's assessments when the damage happens and it's surprise.
Yeah.
The landowner gets assessed. That's a tough one.
Yep.
But we gotta pay for it. But then the taxpayers would probably look at it too, as far as, well, that's their problem. Thank God it didn't happen to me. But why do I have to pay every month for something I drive over? So I could see both points, but
Yeah.
I'm all for the utility.
That isn't something you're planning on trying to finish or get accomplished yet this year.
No, it'd be something that
It
we
would be
implement.
in
We'd
next
like to
year,
roll it
2020.
out with the potential of when and if, well, I shouldn't say if, when the utility switches to monthly billing, it'd be a better place to put it on a monthly bill opposed to a quarterly bill.
Yeah.
So the charge wouldn't be.
It spreads it
Perception is
out
large, yeah.
12 bytes instead of 4 bytes.
So does the
Smaller
utility discussion have an impact on the 24 budget,
Um,
like in this particular
In this particular-
context?
only if it would be done before the end of 24, which that'd be up to you for implementation, I guess.
Yeah, so it'd be a conversation in 24 for implementation in 25.
Yeah, I would say if we do it, it'd be planned to go with the monthly bill whenever they plan to do that, just to make things clear and easy, but just a heads up of, I just want to get that out there.
Okay.
Under admin, you're looking at it.
Okay.
Research.
I'm all done with Public Works. I don't know about
Okay.
anybody else.
I'll just offer, I suppose, on the subject of the utility, my reservation, I suppose, more philosophical than practical about it, which is I think that we asked for money in a referendum. We were told no in quite a resounding fashion, and I think that it's important that we respect that answer from folks. I have anxieties around what creating a utility would essentially communicate to people about. It reminds me quite a bit of like going to dad and asking for something and him saying no, and then me going to mom and her saying yes in some ways. And I think that that's a dynamic that I'm quite sensitive to about the idea. If it's not gonna be in place for the 24 budget, I think that's a discussion that we can continue having.
Yep.
But I also just wanted to put that out, I think is kind of my view on it, so that as conversations are going on internally or board members are thinking about it, I think that's increasingly where I'm coming down on that question right now. I'm open to persuasion and discussion around what that might be, but I think that's kind of how I see that.
Okay, I'd see it a little differently. I look at it as deferred maintenance, that we've dodged the bullet so far, and we don't have the funding to do it in the general fund. So this is a way to get those funds collected to pay for things we need to get paid for. And it's not going to be, $6,000 a year. I mean, if one hiccup happens, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And we're not going to all get it in 1 year, but I think we need to set the infrastructure maintenance mechanism in place in order to make sure that we can have it done in the future. And that's kind of where I don't even look at it as a referendum related thing. This is a recognition that we have an unfunded liability sitting there under our streets, and we're going to find out the hard way when that thing comes to pass. So that's kind of my view on it. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. The optics of how you present this and the conversation that you present it with is got to be very carefully done so that people don't get that impression. We got to sell it as this is infrastructure deferred maintenance that we're trying to get caught up on.
A session I went to, you passed on it.
It's coming up next week.
The gentleman talked about the importance of knowing what you have, having an inventory of your curb, your sewer line, your water line. You know how much you have.
Yep.
And if you have 1,000 miles of sewer line and you're addressing 1 mile of it a year, you're not going to be in good shape. So it starts with knowing what you have.
And we're addressing zero.
We're addressing zero at this point, but it does start with knowing what you have.
Yep.
So you can have a informed idea how much you should be trying to
Right,
address.
and that 6,000
And
a
that
year
is
is
what
not going
this
to
would
cover just
hopefully
taking
do.
the inventory. And that's what concerns
And
me.
I find those arguments being in line with good governance. I don't dispute that it's a serious issue that we need to pay serious attention to. I think I'm trying to think about the other serious issue that I see that sits concurrent with it. And it's largely a function of timing of how, when we asked what we would be doing and basically immediately after having asked. I mean, I think that I'm totally in agreement that this is a pittance to spend on this. It's a very important thing, and it's one of those things that's fine until it's not fine, and then everything is not fine. I mean, I completely agree with that view, but I also think that we need to balance it against the kind of raw just principle that we just asked. So that, and we don't have to decide it tonight, but I think that it's something that I wanted to share my views on. And I appreciate those views because I hear them, totally hear them.
What's interesting is the person that comes up to you after they see the first bill on their quarterlies as to fire hydrant fees. And they say, I don't even have a fire hydrant. Why am I paying this? Well, they're there. They're just a little farther away. What we gotta have is maintaining them. It's all that. So, and that's huge cost. So
Yeah.
I can understand this side of it. And also the side that what you're talking about is we got the message, no more spending, no more. But that was for we were asking for
Personnel.
for personnel. And that was the one thing that they told us, no, you're not going to make that increase because we were asking for maintenance personnel and additional law enforcement personnel. And that increase, and it said no. And I don't feel that this is intentional what we're doing. Well, we didn't get this, so we're gonna, it's totally on a different category.
And that's a message you gotta send out.
Yeah.
It's not, we heard you, you said no more people, but we've got infrastructure things that are not people related that still need to be done. And we don't have them adequately funded. And that's the message you gotta send out.
Yeah.
So it's not a
Just something.
shell game. It's just, we recognize something that we weren't aware of before this year and said, oops,
Whoops.
kind of like cell tower rentals on water towers.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So we've got some good information on areas to look into a little
Mhm.
further,
Mhm.
and as we get, the numbers that come in from other entities that we need to plug in for our budget to help things, we can keep the information heading to you guys. And obviously, so do we need to set another budget meeting to talk about
We
this?
still have the economic development section, don't we?
Oh,
Economic development.
oh, it's in the back of the public works part.
And the fun thing is, some of the stuff does go exactly to what Neil was talking about of extra activities that we add that we have to do. Some of them such as brush and leaf pickup, brush and leaf pickup.
Yeah.
It's a great thing that we do, but at the same time, when we do it, we're taking the guys away from other things that they could be doing. Other issues, banner lights are in there too, fairs in there. A few avenues that we were talking about for the event permits are other ways to raise revenue. It's not like we're trying to raise revenue, we're trying to charge for our time. Those event permits, it takes Ron, what's that, one per hour probably? An event permit, depending on the scale.
Depends on the scale. I wouldn't say that long, but sometimes it's 45 minutes if you're trying to calculate staff and other stuff. Other ones are pretty quick.
And Todd's
Todd's was probably more involved with.
Todd's like an hour with it too, and on there, we write the estimate number of man hours, that, dollar amounts that I'm not saying we try to recoup all of that, because they're putting on events. But sometimes too, they ask for things such as cones and barriers. We're not even charging depreciation on those items. Like if someone uses 12 cones, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say, you need to pay us, $20 to use 10 cones, because every time they use them, we need to replace those items eventually too. And continue use on them. These are items that, from what I understand, is, we're trying to find additional ways to make sure that we're getting adequately charging for our time too. For those event permits, we have between an hour and 2 hours of directors at my time looking at those things, making sure they're up. So things like that are places where you can kind of start charging for things as they get more complicated.
Yeah.
I don't know what the board feels on that. We also acknowledge too that we're doing a public good too at those things too. So we don't also want to, Kyle sitting there, I don't want to charge Kyle $5,000 for Wheels and Wings or bring so many people into the community.
Yeah, balance.
Because we understand what they're doing is very important, but we also want to make sure that, you're kind of putting some onus on the people that don't do the, potentially might not be as good as some other people in terms of practices with their events.
Well, when for me, if you don't mind, I'd just like to comment on this for a second. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but this can be done, is to, all these permits, all these things can be calculated. You know how much time it's taking and what, I don't know, you go by whose ever wage is like doing this research, or does it go by your?
It's usually the people that look at it are Harry, Todd, and Ron, and myself, or those.
So you average that out and then,
Yeah, I would suggest just a flat fee for event permits, just to look it over. I'm not talking about a crazy fee either.
no, but we've got a lot of services here that potentially could be looked at, a lot. And if you could just do that maybe, and so we kind of know, kind of where you want to go with this. I mean,
I started creating an outline of fees and services too, or a fees type of schedule,
Yeah.
that we can definitely, get up here. I also want to change one thing too in our village code. All of our fees are laid out are in the code. Like, for instance, if you need something, it's written in the code. I would like to see the village code say, see fee schedule. So
Yeah.
that way, every year, we could adjust our fee schedule and not have to go back and adjust all of our codes for it.
a fluid fee schedule, I think, is okay with code. We don't have to have that specific fee schedule.
But I'm saying our code right now, everything says the amounts. Nothing says.
Each
could be
section, so you have
outdated.
to go and revise 10, 20 sections instead of just changing one page.
I think, yeah, see code, current fee schedule.
Yeah.
2024, 2025, 2026.
And that would allow us easier time to address some of the fee schedule items too.
Yeah.
And we've started conversation with Ben too, to make sure that our building permits, all those things are adequate too.
Yeah, I'm really. I
Keep
think
in mind, you know,
This is a good idea.
some of these fees, we're not talking large sums of money here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's less than
It's
$7
not gonna,
grand.
it's not gonna balance the budget by any means.
No.
Oh, but we're doing our due diligence to try to be as efficient in providing service, but also not just giving everything away. I don't think people are happy about that when you're doing so much for certain groups or certain this without, you know, the village itself benefiting a little bit out of it. So at least coming out even. We're not here to make money. It's just balance that budget.
Any other questions about the budget itself?
Do you want to run me down just so that I can come away from this understanding what your strategies are? But you had some high level budget balancing strategies that you were
Yeah, so for instance.
thinking
right now,
about.
If you go back to the beginning of this whole document, right?
Summary?
Yeah.
It's in the very beginning of the book. Well,
Okay.
I didn't put yours in, so.
Yeah. I did it myself. We were showing a deficit of $265,000, right? Last year at this time, the deficit was $455,000. So the good news is, well, we're ahead of last year's pace. With that being said, though, I feel our revenues we have right now are accurate. So I would not like to come in there and change our revenues much unless we had new information that was going to indicate that there would be a change. So some of the challenges or strategies we can have to balance this budget is the borrowing mechanism we brought up tonight. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I understand this is more of a, you know, it could be appeared as a shell game, but in actuality, it's what we need to keep the village running. It would be that we do a borrow for, it's roughly what, 155?
Yeah, that was just kind of just an approximate.
Approximation of it, what the budget number we have currently. That could, you know, go up or down depending on what we want to do with those blue highlighted numbers. So we do a borrowing of 155 for that, but then that goes on the tax levy. So that would potentially raise taxes based on what would happen with, you know, there's other circumstances that play out in taxes too. So that is one opportunity you have to allow the budget or allow the continuation of this budget as presented to go would be that, which then would have to find another
100,000.
100,000.
Mhm.
But that would get the services that we were requesting to go. But keep in mind, there's still a few things in there too that we can adjust to bring that number down too. The other option is we still need to figure out how much money we have left of the early TID closure from last year. So we need to figure that number out to figure out how much we have available. We have some land sales happening. We have one for 50,000 up by the Quick Trip. Another one for about 50,000 up at the Quick Trip is going on right now. We're trying to get that one finalized. And then we had the XL Energy one at 325 that's going to close too. So we have some land acquisition prices that we have available to us to use to balance the budget for 1 year, maybe 2 years at most. It doesn't solve a long-term issue as those are one-off revenue streams.
Yeah.
Other revenue would be continue to sell some properties that we no longer want to maintain. We have a lot of parkland that we cannot maintain at current levels we have. So that's always a touchy subject, but it's another avenue you could go down to for future things, especially large parks that potentially be developable that would increase the tax base too. One thing, so those are kind of the options we have for next year for the short term. I kind of like to hear some input on that one. A lot of communities have switched to that one-year borrowing just because the current structure of the state really hamstrings you. For instance, as you see when a levy goes up, what inflation was, they're still not matching. So how can we keep our budget going when inflation rates are higher than our budget increase? So there are some of the problems that we're running into. So I'm kind of turn over to you guys and like to hear what you think.
Well, on the 150 borrowing, I think part of that conversation needs to be, let's say, like we did on the referendum, what does it mean for somebody who has an assessed value of 300, 200, or 100,000? What impact is that going to have? I mean, the borrow levy is about 930 right now.
Yeah, this would
So
bump
this
our-
is
would bump our total
150?
levy up to 117.
Yeah,
$1,070,000.
I'm waiting for, well, we need to get what the assessed value is for the village and what,
Even if we did it
Personal
based on the assessed values we used for the referendum, that would be close enough.
okay,
Just looking, so what are we looking
Yeah.
at saddling
Yep,
people
yep.
with? Is this a viable way? I mean, if it's $20 a month or $10 a month or $5 a month, I don't know that people are going to even register to them. The other thing too on that subject is when we talk about taxes, we really need to get the message out that this is what your tax bill is. This goes to the county, this goes to the school, this goes to the technical institute, and this 31% is what we get. So yes, taxes are high, but it's not all going to us.
right.
And I think people gloss over that or just are not aware of it. You know, they look at their tax bill and say, my tax bill's $2,000. You guys are crying poor. What the heck? And yet really our share of that is a lot less.
And another question for tonight too would be, what's the realistic wage increase that you want to see plugged into this, into it too? Is there a range that you want to see? Tonight we've got a wage grid of what the increases would be to the wages at certain percentages. So if you want that,
Is that the closed session discussion? or-
no,
No, I would like to see the same budget proposed with a 3% increase.
I'd like to see what the
I can-
difference is.
So
Yeah.
Just for,
That's what I want to see. I want to see the difference when
Take a-
you
the closed-
change it from 5 to 3.
The closed session is only about one.
Right.
Oh,
one
okay.
employee.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is, Shannon did what the difference would be between a 2% and a 7% increase for wages.
so
This didn't include the water and sewer guys, did it?
this included police, admin, court, water, sewer, public works.
So it'd be a little
So
less,
just not library.
because
Because
water and sewer already
Are
get paid
separate.
through.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So
But-
it's a little higher than what it would be, because what the water and sewer guys are paid out of the water and sewer fund, not the levy. But that's the overall increase of what a certain percent wage would be to the staff.
so it's
Including
25 grand
fringe.
between 3 and
So-
5.
Including fringe.
Including fringe.
Yeah, when
This-
you
a cou-
redo this, let's just do it for the general fund.
Okay.
Take out the water and sewer folks because they get funded by a separate revenue stream.
And I have another question
Sure.
or concern as to when we talk about the percentage, the top wage earner for whatever it is, maintenance, public works, water, sewer, law enforcement, 2% highest top wage, say you're getting $28 an hour, you get a 2% increase. Lower wage scale obviously would get a 2% increase, but the numbers start. So
Yep.
we could start getting this crazy pendulum of that 2%, like really going high for one and the other one's just climbing a little bit. And so we wind up, what happens, we end up doing this wage adjustment. because the person is unhappy because of that. How is it possible we can look at not across the board wage increases, but vary it to match it, that it's sort of uniform as to the high wage scale versus low?
Well, it's certainly, I mean, Ron and I kind of, we're supposed to be on the year contracts, right, Ron? So Ron and I can be totally different, no problem in that aspect. The maintenance guys, all the maintenance guys are on the negotiated, we honor the negotiated wage increase. The police are union except for Ron and AJ left.
Yeah.
They're non-union. So those two would be impacted by what the board decides for them to, well, the unions are too, but they're in all line on that one.
That's a
And
different,
then all admin staff would be included on that, what the board wishes. So for instance, last year, I believe staff, non-union staff was 3%, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the union one got 4% because we took something away from them. And the other one got, was it 3.5 or 3? So there already was kind of a tiered thing last year. If you're wondering, different rates for different groups.
yeah, but trying to do tiers in the non-union it gets messy real quick.
Yeah, no, I'm asking a question because we're dealing with multiple unions. Yes, you're correct.
The best thing, I know that I kind of talked about in the past too, is we don't have a current wage scale set up in the village. And when you have wage scales, it's easier to do those wage adjustments over, you're supposed to look at your wage scale every 3 to 5 years.
That's what I was talking about, is that could happen.
So, and that's why you're supposed to adjust your wage scales every 3 to 5 years. We don't have a wage scale here. The unions kind of have a little quasi one, but as you know, when we hire employees, it's basically throwing darts at a dartboard to figure out your place to start because we don't have a wage rate set up.
Yeah.
So that does kind of create some issues that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm quickly just taking out those 3 utility.
While you do that,
Yeah, you guys can keep going.
I had a question, I guess, for the board around the wages that we pay ourselves and the commissions. I don't know the history of that. I don't know if that was a recent addition to me. It seems like, I don't know that any of us are here for the particularly robust paychecks that
Well,
we
I've been
get.
able to buy a new vehicle.
And all kinds of stuff with it. And I guess I wanted to put it on the table that we find ourselves in a difficult situation. I think I am interested primarily in trying to protect, not that the total amount that we're paid is going to balance the budget necessarily, but I think it is a chunk of money that is there that I'm not sure we necessarily have to be spending. And so I wanted to raise it to see what kind of reaction was to that idea around reducing it or eliminating it. I don't necessarily, I guess, out of both an act of solidarity, but also out of the recognition that I think it's about $29,000 or something like that. And as I was reading this, the thought crossed my mind. I don't know, though, where other board members feel about that. I don't know if we all want time to think about the implications of that, but it was something that came to mind.
So,
I would have tended to agree with you until 2022 happened.
What happened? I don't know what happened.
I attended more meetings in 2022 than I will likely attend in the next 10 years
There was
on my
something else.
involvement in the board. Yeah, it was,
Crazy.
But we are
Still
doing-
volunteer wages.
we get stuff taken out.
I mean,
We're paying
25,000 in a $7 million budget isn't gonna matter one
yeah.
whit. And I think if you made it 0, it'd be a good gesture, but I think you would have even more difficulty getting people to serve at all. I mean, 3,000 is not a huge incentive a year, but at least it's some consolation for the nights and times you spend away from your family doing this.
That is something to think about, but also, yeah, I'm not looking at what you're talking about is really good, but I'm not looking at an increase in wage for us.
No,
I wouldn't even think about that.
Nope.
And it got here, this has been this wage for a long time. I don't remember.
But I couldn't find when I changed.
Yeah,
You
so,
wanted me to update, I'm still.
It's been a while.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the code is wrong,
Right. it
so
is
it's
wrong.
obviously since '09 it's changed, but
Yeah.
we don't know when since
I
then.
can't find it. I keep looking,
yeah.
so I don't know when it was changed.
Kyle's got
Let
something.
me express my
Kyle
surprise.
seems to have.
Kyle has something that he's raising his hand. Is he able to talk? Kyle?
No. No, this is a workshop session for the board. It's not for the
Yeah, I
gallery.
just wanted to double check.
So anyway, and it's not just meeting time. You spend time away from meetings, discussing it, thinking about it, doing homework. So, I mean, it's a lot of hours a year. To get nothing for it would really be altruistic. And I don't know that you'd find that many altruistic people willing to put up with some of the stuff we've put up with the last 2 years.
You're welcome. You're welcome to donate yours to the village. They will take your check.
I'm sure.
I never thought about it. I suppose an individual could do that.
They'll just deposit it right to the general fund.
So,
And then, in terms of selling land, selling assets, borrowing, what's the kind of the, I mean, should I continue down the path of investigating the borrow? Because it would have to happen real quick.
I'm really.
I would like to investigate all the opportunities we have, and when we meet next in November, we decide.
I just-
Or earlier, if you've got a time frame that requires us to get together sooner.
We also have the meeting, our regular meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
I'm just afraid of borrowing more money for the simple fact that we're gonna be in that same position again. So if we pay it off the following year, we borrow for 20. you
But
know,
we get it back in the levy, so we borrow it,
Yeah,
and then next year the levy gives us the money to pay it back, so we're even.
right.
It's not like we're continually adding to the debt and not paying it off.
I understand
Okay.
that. I'm just,
Yeah, but it's an option we can only exercise once.
yeah.
No,
So if the budget continues to grow outside of what we expect,
Yeah,
we will not have the opportunity
I-
to continue to grow that borrow.
right.
You could do that borrow, I mean, theoretically, you don't want to do that every year, but theoretically, you could do that every year.
Right.
I mean, yes, you
there's
could.
nothing to prevent you.
No, there isn't, but it never gets any bigger. So if your budget continues to grow outside of that borrow,
The borrow, because keep in mind, the borrow can only be the maintenance.
exactly.
Those
Yeah,
numbers can
so
go up,
those
can
those
change.
numbers aren't gonna go up a ton.
No, they won't. So the borrow will stay pretty close to the same with minimal
You
increases.
get a hit the
But if
first
the rest of
year,
the budget outpaces it and you're
then that's-
behind the 8 ball, then it, like I said, it's an option you can only exercise once. So sure, we'll get it, but then that option's now gone. So
Yeah.
This might be something too we have to do every year from now on is do the maintenance and equipment borrow every year. You just, it comes from the debt levy, not from the tax
Yeah,
levy.
so it just rolls
And
over.
every year you just
Mhm.
either you
But
look
at
at your
least
budget.
those items aren't dragging on the.
yeah,
You
no,
look at your budget every year and see what those items are, if you need where you need to increase. So it just basically become another,
Another
So-
exercise.
So
to
the
balance
interest,
budget.
the interest on this is,
whatever the
150,000.
borrow from would be. I would have to see if this is something where you can get low rate government loans, or does it have to be from a bank borrow, which would be probably about 6-7%.
well, build it in as an option for consideration. So
it's up there a little bit.
Do $9,000 on 155 at 8%. So it's not bad.
Yeah.
And again, you build the interest into the levy,
Yeah.
debt levy too. So I mean, you get made whole, not out anything. It's just another way to try to balance it.
So next, I'm just trying to get ideas from next meeting. You'd like to see Brad wants to see a budget with 3% wage increases, correct?
I can.
for contrast, yeah.
I can email you that, like the information here without water sewer.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just don't wanna, I don't wanna miss something and give you the wrong information.
Right.
I can look
Yeah.
at it better tomorrow.
So we can see what
I can email
3%
you that
increase would
out.
do to the budget. I anticipated it's gonna be tens of thousands. I mean,
Probably about 25 grand, I bet.
I was between 20 and 30 thinking.
Yeah.
And then we borrow, whatever. If there's any areas you want to cut, let me know too. We can kind of work things out there. But this is the reality. We try to present as lean budget as we can tonight.
Yeah.
Without too much.
Yeah, I don't think there's any
Wiggle
fat
room.
in it.
I mean, we tried to be cautious on the revenue side. We tried to overstate our insurance. We found out we were actually understating our insurance, which kind of surprised me, but.
On the land sale idea, I don't know, do you have like a list of spots of where those, like if that were to be an idea that were considered where those sales would go? What that would look like?
We would have to kind of designate or else use the funds that we currently anticipate getting. I'd say we're better off anticipating the funds we're going to get because we're a few documents away from closing on that $325,000 one. We're a purchase agreement and a land transfer from the $50,000 one from Berger Builders. We're a development agreement and a purchase agreement for $50,000 from KLC. Some of the stuff is coming to fruition quickly. Some of the stuff too, though, is gonna, we're gonna need some of this money to help pay off some of the debts we said we weren't gonna borrow for, such as the demo of the milk house too. If our TID does not create enough revenue in it, we have to make sure that we're offsetting it with some of these sales, because when I presented the demo of the milk house, I said we would not be using levy
Right.
taxpayer money to demo it.
Yeah, it's got to be land sale dollars.
So it's gotta be
Yeah.
land sale dollar, or if the TID has enough money to pay off which I'm hoping there's enough increase in the TID to help pay for those bond payments for the demo.
If those land sales are in the TID district, does the money have to go to the TID? Doesn't it?
I will double check that, but those guys are not getting any TID
I
dollars.
understand, but
So
it's
I will check
a
into
land
that.
sale in the TID district, so it would make me think that everything in that TID district happens there, stays there.
And I know the 25 of that 50 was gonna be used for the demo of that house that was on fire.
Yeah.
We're gonna reimburse ourselves to the TID over time.
Okay. Good.
Any other areas? I know you,
I'm good.
I'd like to thank Tanya for all her time and effort on this one.
Yeah.
Really. Well, thanks
Budget
to
is
both of you.
Troublesome at best.
Just wonderful. Wow.
All right. There's another item on here, 3C capital projects. Has that been covered?
Oh, basically, we're working on making sure that our capital, just a little update that I'm meeting with MSA, because that capital CIP plan will be part of a borrow for June next year. I just want to on your radar that we're working on that to see what the actual CIP borrow is going to have to be.
Okay.
But we are working on that. They're supposed to reach out to the department heads this week to set up meetings to make sure they have their CIP wants, or needs, not wants, but needs on their radar.
Okay.
Is that everything then for revenues, expenses, and capital projects?
Thanks, right.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move to item number 4. The board may go into closed session proceedings under 1985 1C to consider employment promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This pertains to 2023 employee wages, and I'm told this is for a specific employee, which affords us the opportunity to go to closed session for that.
I'd like a motion to go into closed session.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Bruce, a second by Arvid to go into closed session. I'll take a roll call vote to make sure that everybody's represented. Neil?
Aye.
Van?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Bruce?
Aye.
Arvid?
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it, 5-0.
You want Tanya and I to leave?
Thanks, Al.
Yeah.
Like,
Carrie, you can let me know.
I'll take notes. Yeah. Just the last motions.
So everybody remember to shut your mics off. Do we pause the stream then?
You can send the stream now, because the rest is closed session.
Okay.
Carrie, you'll be back, right?